Hey guys, welcome to my beginning of my 10.2 content. Today I'm just gonna be talking about some kind of wish list stuff. I'm gonna be talking about fire today, and I hope to do arcane and frost in the next 1 or 2 days, so one at a time. Just talking about my thoughts about the spec, what I would like to see going into 10.2 for the health of the spec, and I have example tier set that I think would be really cool. Yeah, just stuff kind of like that. So current impression of the spec, very strong for fire. We are immortal due to having 20% verse basically. We have cauterize, we have insane mobility, insane damage, etc., which is a really good spec overall. But what kind of I would like to see, or what things Blizzard should focus on, in my opinion, is that our talent tree is basically very good right now. We have essentially 70% of our talent points locked in, but 30% are actually very highly variant. And so examples of talents that you could remove and you basically have a good chance of removing, if it wasn't incentivized by the next tier or whatever. Things like, Flame On, 1 point, you can remove that because it's only the extra charge, not the cooldown reduction. You have Fire Starter, Fervent Flickering, but Fervent Flickering does unlock Flame On, so, there's that. Um, Intensifying Flames is obviously something you can remove. Conflag, it's 2.3% of our damage roughly. Feel the Burn also is severely weaker now compared to before. It's quite strong now because we do get to maintain 100% with Alexstrasza's Fury. But if we were to play From the Ashes, for example, instead, then that uptime might not be as high, which might put it in the have it be a contentious choice to remove, especially if you want to remove Conflag. Improved Scorch is something you can remove. Call of the Sun King certainly something you can remove. Um, yeah, I mean even Alexstrasza's Fury is FTA From the Ashes, or Controlled Destruction versus Firefall. There's a lot of variance in these builds, but a lot of the core points are locked in, which is great, right? I think this is a good spot for the talent tree. However, having said that, one of the things that does actually matter, which talents we're going to take, is going to be our tier set and how it's going to affect how we want to play, right? So, for example, if you make a build that is very heavily revolving on fireballing, then obviously Firefall is going to be a lot more powerful than Controlled Destruction, right? Especially if you take something like Flame Accelerant, which is actually a very cool point. Would not mind playing that for a tier. Um, yeah, so that's gonna depend, right? So basically, a tier set that's going to be hugely transformative to our rotation is one that is going to be very cool because our core kit as fire is quite basic fundamentally if you remove the tier set. But with the tier set, things can change drastically, right? And I hope that with the loss of this very impactful tier set that we have right now, going into next year, we're also going to have a pretty impactful tier set, and I'll have an example of that later on. Um, but I just want to do a little segue to something that's been something that's been bothering me, I suppose, with Fire for a while. I have a fundamental desire, basically, to see very big buffs to Phoenix Flame and very big buffs to Scorch. Basically, my issue is that Phoenix Flame just does too little damage considering it's a 25-second cooldown. It's just way too weak compared to something like Fire Blast or Pyro. A Phoenix Flame's damage is actually quite comparable to a Fire Blast, even though its cooldown is much, much longer and also is on the global cooldown. And I get that it's not our main ability, historically, but it's been becoming more of a main ability as time goes on. So, if Fire is ever tuned weak for some reason, instead of doing a big aura buff, I would rather see a small aura buff and then a big buff to something like Phoenix Flame. We're talking 30%, quite hefty, because I want the spell to really be impactful, especially when we played with it during our current 2-piece, 4-piece. It felt very impactful to cast, and I would really hate to just lose that feel of just throwing a PF and it does a lot of damage. If the concern is AoE damage, they could make it so that it does more damage to the primary target and then less damage to secondary targets, something like that, right? And then the other one is Scorch. Scorch just does way too little damage. It is 24% spell power. Pyro does 171, for example, and Fireball does around 70. I want to say 78% spell power if I'm remembering correctly, somewhere in that range. So Scorch just does way too little, in my opinion. I think that if Scorch in Execute is not out damaging Fireballs, I think something's wrong, and I think certainly right now it is not quite there yet. I think it's almost there, to be fair. That's why I think buffing Scorch by maybe 20% is probably a good move that they could do, and just kind of makes our execute a little bit beefier. If they're worried about damage, they can take out some power from Searing Touch a little, make it 150 or something. But certainly, I feel like Scorch is maybe a little bit too weak. But this one is not too big of a deal. I think Definitely big buffs to PF though is more important. As for like an example tier set that I think would be really cool, I mean I've been floating this idea around for a while, but something like, I have it like written down, so I'm just gonna read it. Imagine if it read something like this. When you have not cast Phoenix Flames for 10 seconds, so this is the two piece. When you have not cast Phoenix Flames for 10 seconds, your next cast of Phoenix Flames activates Rise from the Ashes, reducing the cooldown of Phoenix Flames by 10 seconds. So it gives us that like, two piece Phoenix Flame regeneration so that it's a more impactful part of our kit. And the four piece is the really impactful one, which is whenever Rise from the Ashes is activated, so that, your first PF in 10 seconds, Fire Blast's cooldown is reduced to 0.5 seconds for 3 seconds. So the idea is basically when you cast PF, you get to cast like 6 IBs in a row pretty much, or maybe not 6 because obviously there's a global cooldown, but certainly you have essentially what is infinite IBs for like 3 seconds. I think this would be really cool for a few reasons. One, it would give us a lot better, like a more enjoyable time outside of Combust, because obviously if you get to PF outside of Combust with like Alexstrasza's Fury, and then you can like, Fireball, IB Pyro, IB like Fireball, IB Pyro or something like that, after one PF, you'd get like 2 SKB stacks, or you'd reduce the cooldown of Combust, or like it's just more interactive gameplay. It's stuff that you can do outside of Combust is actually more interesting of a decision, and there's going to be very cool interactions I think with the rest of our kit when it comes to like travel times and deciding how many IBs you want to press in each cast, and a fast pace, right? So I think that's really cool. And then the other one is also it would basically make PF in Combust feel good to cast. Because right now, casting it with From the Ashes is completely fine, but we don't play this talent right now. But with Alexstrasza's Fury, casting PF in Combustion does definitely feel really, really bad, because it's a guaranteed crit that you're casting in a guaranteed crit buff, which doesn't really make sense, it's counterintuitive. Right now, you sometimes do it because of our current tier, but obviously that tier is going to go away. So if you imagine we don't have the 2-piece debuff that we currently have, why would you ever want to cast PF in Combust, right? Which is something I don't really like. I want to cast it sometimes in some situations. I think that's a good spot to be in. So I think something to incentivize that, like reducing IB cooldown, can go a long way. Obviously, this is just an example. I would love to see this. I think this would be a fantastic tier set, if I may say so myself. But also, like, I understand that, they probably won't land on something like this. But any tier set that basically includes PF or IB is going to be a decent tier set. And then any tier set that includes both PF and IB is probably going to be a really good tier set, unless they do something really clunky with it, right? I think anything like that is going to be very interesting. Anything that incentivizes windows of gameplay, and you'll notice this be a theme as I go on with my other specs. I really like the idea of like playing around windows. I think it's a very fun like gameplay scenario. So yeah. I hope this video has been enjoyable to watch. I hope you guys like my idea. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you like my tier set, give me a +1. If you don't, call me an idiot. But yeah, thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.